Hey, good evening, Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope. Tonight, I have a very unique guest. I would say special guest. But one of the things that we always try to say is listen to our youth. And one of the things that I like to do on the show is I like to bring younger people on from time to time, um, because sometimes we don't listen to them, and sometimes we don't realize how they're doing extraordinary things in our communities. And they are, we've always said the younger generation is our future. I don't consider this man too much younger than me, but he's an interesting young man. I know his mom and his dad. His name, his father is like a big OG in the town that I grew up in. It's very interesting even calling him the same name as his father. So it's it's different for me. So we got Reggie Parker here this early evening. Reggie, explain to the audience where you grew up at, how you grew up.
Yeah, so like I said, my dad, Big Reg as it were, and when I was growing up, he was in the Air Force. So we spent a decent amount of time at like Andrews Air Force Base. So I grew up in Maryland. I grew up near DC. So, that was basically where my roots were starting out.
So you basically grew up at Andrews Air Force Base, understood the military life. You was, as they say, military brat. I wouldn't consider you a
That's right.
brat, but so you understood um, what would you consider a branch of government. Um, Talk about your high school and college and stuff.
Yeah. So in high school, I went to the school it's in Maryland, but people think it's in DC. It's called DeMatha. It was a Catholic high school, pretty well known for sports and like academics. So college life was pretty not easy, but I was prepared for it going in. And when I went to school, I went to Rutgers, so that's where my Jersey roots are now. I'm still in that area near the school, and when I was there, I studied political science.
Okay, so political science was your major.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, great, because we know we're gonna definitely dive into
Oh, yeah.
that. I know that I know that one at the Mather, and I'm quite sure your uncle told you about the history of that school, and he was probably proud of you when you went to the Mather as high school student, because when me and him was in high school, we used to actually he used to always bring the parade all American thing to school, and we talk about high school sports. I mean, we used to go back and forth with high school sports even when we were in high school. So let me ask you, what made you go to college and major in political science? What was that itch for politics?
I think it's just the culture of DC. Growing up in it, most people that live there, in the area I was in, a lot of people's parents had government jobs and stuff like that. That you're right there. You're near the White House. You could take the metro and be near the Washington Monument or in front of the White House in like 30 minutes. So I like the culture and I wanted to learn more about that world. And that was probably what drove me to study it when I was in college.
Yeah, that's funny you said that because I got a friend of mine that's originally from New York, and
Mm.
he lives down there. He said, man, listen. He said if you from the New York area, any area outside of DC, and you get a 212 phone call, answer that call because you never know who it's going to be.
Yeah, yeah, seriously.
Basically, it could be a politician, it could be anybody on the phone. So you graduated from Rutgers, which is beautiful campus, and I know that you had ran for
Yeah,
politics last year.
yeah.
Explain
So
explain what you had did with that. With committeeman?
yeah, so at one point my wife ran for a Democratic committee. Just because after school I've been in the area, I know some like local journalists, and they edged me into that politics world. And last year, one of the schools near here, they were thinking about selling the school. And, the Board of Ed, it was a whole controversy between the community and the board. And someone, convinced me, hey, you should run. So I ended up getting on the ballot, me and a team, we called ourselves the Students First campaign. And in the middle of that campaign, COVID. So,
Wow.
yeah. So the vote was in April. And, if you know anything about like small politics, you got to knock on doors, you got to fundraise and stuff like that. And it's hard in this environment.
Yeah, yeah. So we gonna just shift from the
Mhm.
politics just 1 minute. I know that you work in the financial sector. What drove you to that? Like, what was that experience like?
I mean, after like '08, getting out of college and stuff like that, one, you need a job. And actually, two, it's actually weirdly connected. Like I would say my political background helps me with finance, especially since Trump got in office. Like politics and the market are like this now. And
Okay.
constantly, paying attention because if a tweet goes out, some stocks might jump, they might drop, and someone calls me and says, "Hey, what's going on?" Like, you got to be informed. So it's actually been helpful.
Yeah, I know behind the scenes, we agreed that the president now is like, let me just say President Trump because I don't know if he's the president now, but let's just say President Trump, uh, he's going to go down as very polarizing, for lack
Mhm.
of better words. Let me ask you about your side thing you do, your
Oh
comedy,
yeah,
man. Let's talk about that. What I mean, you're a jack of all trades, man.
I I can't I can't stop. Like I drive my wife crazy because I get out of work and now I'm on a laptop. I'm on a podcast. Off a podcast. I'm going to some show. After the show, someone wants to talk politics. I'm doing that. So I don't know how to just sit still. So I'm constantly looking for things to do. And comedy, I started in DC, and it was like a thing because, I'm sure my dad. He's a fun guy. He's a
Yeah.
live guy, and I think kind of following his footsteps. I'm not as animated, in a one-on-one conversation, but like on stage, I think that's when I start to,
Oh,
you
so
know,
you actually are comfortable on stage. Don't have, as they say, stage fright. Able to have that relationship with the crowd. That's wow. That's good wheelhouse to have. A lot of people could be funny and not get on stage and can't say nothing.
some of the funniest people I know aren't comics. Like regular people are funny, but comedy is like they say it's an art, but like you practice certain things. So there's a rhythm that you follow when you're up there. There's certain things that through practice this works, this doesn't work, and that's really all it is. Like hitting the reps, getting in the gym, as we call it, like an open mic. And the more reps you get, the better you get, the faster you are, and it's a grind because
All right,
right now you just
I gotta put you on the spot. I gotta put you on the spot.
yeah.
Give me your top three all time comedians.
Yeah. So everyone's going to give you prior, right? That's a given. Um, my sleeper pick is Robin Harris back in the day because I just thought like his style was so cool. I got a huge list, but like being like 100% someone that I saw and got to see perform. I don't know if you know him, but Patrice O'Neill was
Okay.
just that guy was quick, could just roast anybody. And he pushed it, like he always pushed his joke and made people uncomfortable, but brought it back to like, this is where I'm coming from. And I think that style is like, it's the hardest style, in my opinion.
Yeah, I got three favorite comedians. A lot of people don't know when I always say one name, they be looking at me like I'm crazy. It's Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy was just,
Uh, I love your neighbor. Dave is my guy.
yeah,
I love Dave Chappelle. And my last one, she don't do comedy no more. She kind of like retired. I was a big Carol Burnett fan when I was a kid, man.
she was great.
I just think she's just funny, but everybody always look at me and be like, "Huh, hey, Carol Burnett," but you know. So who? Let me ask you, who are your biggest political influences?
I mean, I think if you're in my generation, Obama just jumps out at you right away. Just the way he carried himself, the way he was able to kind of elevate himself. If you look at Obama, like at the time, people were questioning him because it's like, hey, this guy's young. He's only been in the Senate for a certain amount of time, but some people just have it, and like he had it, like that thing where people could get behind you. And I think he's an incredible political figure. And in the modern era, right now, I would say Stacey Abrams out of Georgia. She didn't really win a bit the office that she went for recently, which winning's not everything in my opinion because
Hmm.
what she's doing on the ground is actually influencing the election today. So people don't focus on the small time as much as they should.
All right, one more. You ain't got one more. You gave me two. You gave me see President Obama, that charisma
Mhm.
you can't learn that. That just had to be innate, I would say. So I would definitely see that, and I know why Stacey Abrams. She's her and Nina Turner is something about them two young
Yeah.
ladies. I don't think they get the credit that they deserve. Being thinkers, being forward thinkers. I actually listen to Nina Turner on her podcast a lot, so very interesting. You don't have another one? You don't have three?
So, because I studied political science, and then you start going back, like Roosevelt, FDR. I like the way he stepped up in a moment where
Hmm.
we were kind of like, it's kind of like now, like we're right here, and it's like, are we going this direction? Are we going that direction? And he really sort of changed the way the White House functioned, and politically, historically, he's one of my favorites.
So let me ask you. I always mess with people when I go when like I always say that I'm a layman.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of us have a basic understanding of civics
Sure.
and have a basic understanding of government. Um, so I never really got a chance to really talk to a person that was a political science major and really understood the political world. That's not sometimes we watch the news and I'm not a mainstream news type of person, unfortunately, because I just think it's too sided either to the left or the right, and I think that they give opinions, so to say.
Yeah.
So we were talking behind the scenes, and I was saying how right now what's going on. This is like you said, this is the Super Bowl going on for you. This is palm sweaty watching what's going on. Explain to us the importance or unimportance of the electoral college. What you say is, I'm all ears. I don't really know enough. I'm not one of those people that just be like, get rid of electrical college and not really understand the full history of it. Could you explain that to us?
Sure. So the Electoral College is controversial for a couple of reasons. Sorry about my camera here, but with the Electoral College, what you have is a system that's designed to basically give representation to sort of just different parts of the electorate. Because if you ran it off the popular vote, the theory was you would be take a city like New York and California, just run up the score there, and the whole rest of the country doesn't really have a say. So it's designed to try to help balance that out. And in some ways it does, and in some ways I think I'm not necessarily an abolish the electoral college guy. I think that's not quite the answer. I think it could be tweaked a little bit. But if you look at these elections, and even President Trump, like you mentioned, the last time out of the last 9 elections, um, Democrats have won like 7 of them, like in terms of the popular vote. But they've only had the presidency a set amount of times. Like Trump didn't get more votes. I believe the first time Bush ran, I think that was Bush Gore. He didn't have the popular vote, and it allows the system where it's not about the most popular guy; it's about the person who can game that system. And part of it, like I said, I get the intention, but I think when you see what's happening, like even in the Senate, for instance, you got a large part of the population, like the cities that we're in, that have like 30% representation, but it's 70% of the
Mm.
election. So you got to figure that out. I think, and I'm not fully it should just be the popular vote, because I think that's how you get into trouble. I think you get more celebrities as president in that situation. So it needs a tweak, but that's kind of a quick breakdown, I think.
Okay, so we talk about this Super Bowl.
Hmm.
What's going on? It's funny. I don't think I told you this behind the scenes, but I could tell you now.
Hmm.
I am a resident of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So, and I know
Very
what I know,
important.
and it's funny because I said the last election in 16, I told a friend of mine he's going to win Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
Um, for those that don't know, Pennsylvania is I would call it a purple state. It's not red or blue. It's red. It's real blue in certain areas and real red in certain areas. So this is why we're held up. Pennsylvania, I guess, is holding the country up because it has all these delegates at stake. Explain to us what is going on, if you understand it.
Yeah. So what you're seeing here is and this is where some of the controversy is coming because, like you mentioned, the Super Bowl, you got two teams, right? You got red and blue, and like you mentioned, media, you got an opinion over here and an opinion over here about what's going on. But ultimately, if you break this down, what I think is happening is because of COVID and the current president, he made a big emphasis on showing up in person to vote, right? The Democrats took a strategy of mail ballots or early votes and stuff like that. And what you're seeing is on the day of Trump just running up these numbers, just blowing out these states. And now these ballots are getting counted now. And what's happening is because of that emphasis, this is more democratic than usual in terms of the Democrats themselves doing mail ballots. So you're watching Pennsylvania and the votes looks like he's got a huge lead and it just keeps coming down and coming down. And that's happening in a lot of places sort of unexpectedly. The problem I think with it though is we're sort of a conspiracy minded electorate right now. And any sort of like confusion, delay, process, you're getting more of that polarization you talked about. And you have a segment of the population that thinks these aren't real ballots coming in that are getting counted. You got a segment that, you can't convince them otherwise. And overall, I think this election is actually being run very smooth. But outside of the actual
Says the political science major. You got people going crazy, pulling their hair, talking about
yeah,
they stressed out.
that comes from sort of a lack of like understanding. And not to say that people don't understand voting, but they're not. There's so many different processes. Each state has its own rules. So you're looking at one place, they got to be done by 8 o'clock, November 3rd. You're looking at I think Nevada, they can go till the 12th.
Yeah. What's funny is about 2 weeks ago, I put in a group that the justices had ruled that Pennsylvania's mail-in ballots didn't have to be in the mail until 8 o'clock Tuesday night.
Right.
So a
Right.
lot of them is just
So
being touched in Harrisburg. So
yeah,
so you would say the process actually is really
for for where we're at today, the fact that you could know more or less what's going to happen by the end of this week, that is staggering because no one has ever done this many mail-in ballots in this many states. And we knew it was coming, like that's what gets me about like people watching this. All of this was described, if you know where to look, and you're going to get this influx of ballots. It takes time to process them. Things as simple as just taking a ballot out of an
so
envelope.
this so this
Takes
so this this is really what true democracy is about. Right here, what's going on? This is the process is going exactly the way it's supposed to go.
for well, let's put it this way: if you buy into this political system that we
Okay.
have currently, which I think we were talking a little bit behind the scenes. There's more of like a progressive movement. There's a right movement as well. Like you mentioned, the Tea Party. There's people that don't like the current system. I mean, honestly, probably most of us at this point. But like, if you look at this is almost like a not quite, but like in a lot of ways, this is like almost a 50-50 split. Like this is a very close election.
Yeah, I was saying to myself, like, what happens if they both finish with the same amount of electoral votes? It's very possible.
It is. It's plausible. I'll give it that. It's plausible. You don't want to see that because then when I
That
just said smooth,
is,
it's not going to be smooth.
and that means the Supreme Court gets involved.
Yeah, the Supreme Court, the Congress gets involved. There's all kinds of little theories that people have, and I think, like you mentioned, the media, they throw out these kind of like political nerds, what ifs, and we sit back and we're like, yeah, what happens if they both have 269? And nobody really knows what that looks like.
Yeah, and then somebody that remember the law comes back to a law from the 1800s and says, I
Exactly.
remember this law, and they put a clause in, and said this would happen, and this and he, that's a very interesting thing. And I really commend you for like I told you, educating myself and my audience on this, because I think that we don't understand the nuances of really our political structure. And I believe that I said it. It was President Trump, but maybe it was President Obama who really has us thinking a little bit more political, a little bit more understanding our local elections and understanding our national elections a little bit better. And it's good that American citizens are starting to understand their political might and understand that that one vote does count.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me
And
ask you. I forgot my thought, man. I forgot my thought. I forgot my thought. I forgot my thought. Wow, wow. I had something I wanted to ask you. So let me ask you this. This one, excuse me. It was always pros and cons. One of the things that I do is I try to listen to the pro right people and the pro
mhm.
left people.
Oh yeah,
Um, and I know that it was actually a lot of people that didn't like mail-in ballots. Period. Is mail-in ballots like I know that it always has been reports of flaws, and I don't know. I don't know. Like you said, we're in a conspiracy age, so
yeah, yeah. I think part of it is sort of we function off of like common sense versus actually like without acknowledging that someone that has to run these types of systems has to think about that too. Like, for instance, if what happens if it goes to the wrong place? There's signatures on the ballots, there's barcodes on the ballots. You can check a lot of this information, and that's really what's interesting is that you could look at a voter registration list and say, this is the set number of ballots, and is it matching up with what's coming back? There, I don't want to tell anybody, what to believe in terms of like ballots and stuff. Believe what you want. But in my opinion, it's a more or less functioning system. I don't see the major flaws the same way that I think people are seeing this, and I think there's a lot of misrepresentation of the ballots. Like like this idea that these ballots are like streaming in right now that are getting counted. It's like no, they've been there. they're there. You're just counting
yeah.
them now.
One of the things that you always hear from both sides, like I told you, is voter suppression. And I think that just me living in a different area, and I'm quite sure you noticed it, even living in DC compared to living in a hot spot like Jersey,
Yeah,
where every school, without COVID, every school is open to place a ballot. It's not hard to vote.
right.
I know that a lot of people said that voter suppression goes on. Do you think that these individual states, that what they make it easier or hard for people to vote?
It depends on who's who's running the show, right? Like, there's always been things like gerrymandering, which like we took the census this year, and this is a big election actually because they can redistrict now. So, like for instance, if Trump wins, it may become harder for certain places to, even with a big vote count, to go blue. So this is an opportunity for both sides to decide how some of these districts get drawn up. You're right about different controversies like less polling places. Um, there are some that say that like voter ID, for instance, which like, oh yeah, you should have an ID to vote. Well, if you don't have the money to get an ID, or if there's some sort of reason legally or something that you don't want to go to the DMV because maybe you didn't pay, some tickets or something like that. Like
Yeah,
there's a lot of things that look innocent that are actually harmful for voting. And it's hard it's like impossible to prove in a lot of ways. So if you say I'm being suppressed, the other side can make a you know rational argument for, well, there should be less ballots because they only use, or excuse me, polling places because only 20% of them get used, and it allows for things like you saw in Texas where they basically got down to one um, ballot box in a place that was the size of Rhode Island. Like this is the type of stuff that happens. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's targeted towards us. I think there's been a long history, and by us I mean African Americans, Black people, there's been a history, whether it's poll taxes, whether, just different things that we've had to struggle with as people to actually get to the ballot. Like that still goes on. It's just it's a little bit more kind of sanitized and you know.
Yeah, one of the things that I had been talking with another show that I do, a lot of people don't understand that half of the country doesn't even have Wi-Fi.
Right.
And being from big cities like New Jersey, places in New Jersey and New York and certain areas, you'd be like, what do you mean people don't got Wi-Fi? But literally half of the country don't have Wi-Fi. So
Right.
me understanding that, I could see how in real rural areas a person is known, everybody knows the person, but they might not even have a valid ID.
Right.
And it may seem like, oh, that's just one person, but this can happen all over. With valid ID, not having their being a registered voter. And it didn't take long for myself to register to vote, but could you imagine not having access to the internet
Right. Right.
to
These
register
are
to vote?
things that, in a lot of ways, we're all in our kind of our own bubble, right? So, over the past couple of days, and it's getting closer, right? The Georgia race right now for the presidency is very close. I mean, I think at this point we're within 7,000 votes.
Wow.
And I've been talking to people throughout the week, and I'm telling you, I'm looking at these numbers because I nerd out and stuff, and I'm like, Georgia's in play. And every day I talk to someone, it's like, no, Georgia's not in play. And that mentality right there actually permeates. Like if you live somewhere and for 40 years, every time you voted, it didn't matter because the exact opposite thing of what you wanted happens. At a certain point, you're like, yeah, it doesn't matter.
And I know that's and you never told me your personal political affiliation, but you just said you ran for the Democratic thing, so your wife did. So, I know Georgia being in play kind of makes you feel happy being a Stacey Abrams.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say you're a fan. Stacey Abrams is a political influencer, and like, wouldn't that be something if Georgia delivers the Democratic Party the presidency after what she went through?
Yeah, and that was a clear case, and there again, it's controversy, but in a lot of ways, I think she pointed out that like there was voter suppression, according to her in Georgia, that kept her out, and it still kind of continues. There's questions about the post office and stuff in Georgia. So I was an independent personally, politically. To run, I had to like kind of pick a side, and I got
yeah. New Jersey does that. You got to like pick one, and I heard that.
But I mean, this stuff's incredible, and I think that as people see that, yeah, this can matter, and for someone like me that ran a local office, it doesn't really matter to an extent what the president does when like my resident school may get sold, and where do these kids go? They get displaced. Like that's a small 10-person, council of people that nobody knows who they are, and they're making moves in your city.
I'm gonna ask you a question. This is kind of me trying to use a little foresight. I know me and your uncle had talked about this before, that if Vice President Biden and Senator Harris win, then that means we will only have two black men or black people as senators, Tim Scott and Cory Booker.
Right.
Let me. Do you think that not this isn't a racial question. This is more. Do you think that it is any body on either side that if they were really put in a position, they could be the one that could be work with people across the aisle, like be very bipartisan. I mean, be like listen, I know that Vice President Biden said if he wins, he's going to be the president of all the people, and he has even hinted with putting Governor Kish. Was it Governor? Kish was a governor or a senator?
I think it's Senator.
Senator Kish. I know you was talking about putting Kish from Ohio in his cabinet, which would be very interesting, to say the least. Do you think that it's anybody that's like, including Vice President Biden and Kamala Harris, if they win, or anybody up and coming that's really their politics, and they have that personality that could really reach across the aisle and really unify the country, so to
Yeah.
say.
I think that given the current layout, not to be like a pessimist, but I don't see in the current dynamics, this sort of, if one side's running it, we're going to obstruct it. If the other side's running it, they're going to obstruct it. I don't see it, but I could see someone like Sherrod Brown, right? He's a senator out of Ohio, who's it's a red state, but he's a Democratic senator, and he's actually like sort of a union guy, like a workers type of person. And I think that that's kind of what made Bernie so popular was that he talked about workers and stuff like that. In this election, even though you mentioned race, if you look at the numbers when they come out, like this actually started to break a little bit through racial lines. There was increased voting for people of color for Trump. You would think that wouldn't happen, but like that's what happened this election. So I think there's a message here that someone needs to seize on. I don't see the person yet, but the message is that this is a populist movement, kind of what Bernie did, that we're trying to make it better for like your average person. And once they kind of start getting away from more of like the corporate interests and start talking to people, I think someone does have an opportunity to get the type of political capital to go across the aisle.
Yeah, I know that AOC says some things, and
Well,
she's definitely as I say, she's a lightning rod. With all
yeah,
due respect, for lack of better words, she's a younger polarizer.
yeah,
Put it
but
that way, because definitely we like you said, we're looking at the numbers, and I always say that statistics and numbers can give you something to build on, or it
mhm,
can give you something to look like. I think that like Tim Scott, he's a very interesting
yeah.
Republican. I know that he said that he was gonna once his term is over, he's gonna leave political life, which is
I think that I think that'd be a big blow for that party because I think he's very very good at what he does.
yeah, and,
You know,
and I know that he for a lot of people that don't know who Tim Scott is, he's a Republican senator, but I know that he does reach across the aisle a lot, and
he does.
I know, man, we had talked about the progressives. I told you that I was one of those people that I'm hard on the DNC,
Mhm.
and I've been very adamant on
I think
speaking,
I think
speaking about them. And it's not that I don't like Democrats. It has nothing to do with like. It's
mhm.
that I believe, and even some of the experts kind of coming out that my co-host, she always says on shows when we talk about politics, their messaging is just not good. They don't.
that's that's the problem. The problem is they're trying to run with this playbook, and again, I talked about sort of common sense and assumptions. They have a lot of assumptions. Like you assume Trump has this language that some deem like racist rhetoric, right? And you're like, well, how could someone of a Latino or a black person vote for him? Well, guess what? More of those people voted for him. So it's not really the packaging, right? It's the message, and I think that the Democratic Party right now is very much kind of let's put it like this woke, and they're worried about the demographics less than their actual message, and I think it's a big weakness that needs to be addressed. And
I
I don't
guess
know if
I
you can
guess
handle
that's how we know in 2006 when a junior senator out of Chicago, Illinois, who had the charisma,
it. Mhm.
basically took hold of the party.
Yeah,
Took hold and grabbed the party by his hands and pulled it across the finish line for two elections. And it's amazing that in my personal opinion, they gotta let President Obama retire and stop trying to use his progressive way of thinking instead
mhm.
of looking at the rest of the people in the party that are very progressive. And I know a lot of people were upset that or like I said, I know a lot of people are upset at what's going on with who's the presidency, but you got two people that's still there. You got Nancy Pelosi and you got Mitch McConnell.
Right. That is going to be once in the story of this presidency, because it's looking like the Senate is going to stay in Republican hands, and it looks like the White House, as of now, looks like it's going to go to Joe Biden. So that makes you wonder, like you mentioned, reaching across the aisle, how does that government function? You're not in that situation. You don't expect a lot of big sweeping change, because why would the Republicans sign off on that? So those two have a lot more power than they probably should. um, and that's something where I think you just keep building out the coalition. You keep putting these, like you said, lightning rods in there to affect change. And I think over time, the population will get used to some of these ideas that seem radical at the time. This party today does not really even still reflect the Obama kind of coalition. And it's time happens and things change.
Is it? I know I gotta wear you out with this political stuff. I told you you got your political science major. I got somebody here now. You my expert without CNN and NBC and Fox. Because them guys is paid, man. But anyway, look, let me. Is it anybody, in the Republican Party that's on the rise that we should be like, this guy's coming, or this female's coming, this person's coming, excuse my language?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I think Trump has taken so much kind of oxygen out of the room that it's hard to see what's next. Like you mentioned Tim Scott. Like, I could see a guy like that making a move, out of everybody in the party. I think, unfortunately, what happened with Trump, and I think time will bear this out. A lot of their kind of traditional guys, like the Marco Rubios, the Ted Cruz, it's going to be hard for those guys to run after Trump. So I think it's going to have to be somebody that Trump kind of like anoints, because the way this election is going, he still has a lot of political power in that party, even losing the presidency. So
it's funny because me and your uncle, we were talking about Tim Scott, and we both was like, yo, if he was to drop Pence and make Tim Scott his running mate, how interesting it would be. How interesting the race could it be? I had a wild card in the Democratic Party, man. I was a big Castro guy, man.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Julian. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I don't think a lot of people understood his platform, but he just didn't have the money.
It's the money and the name recognition. Like he gives me somewhat like those Obama vibes, like the young guy who like knows his stuff and knows his demographic, because he's in a tougher space for a Democrat. I think he's based out of Texas, and like that's a tough area, and he holds himself well. But you're right, you got to get that money behind you. You got to get the support, because as you see this election, billions of dollars.
I think they raised $1 billion apiece.
Yeah. Trump made his a lot earlier in the campaign, and Biden came on late with money. But it looks like, it wasn't about the money. I think this election was a lot about this was a feeling election. This was about how people felt about the candidates and what they wanted.
Yeah, I know a lot of the, like I said, the experts on TV. I don't watch it. I actually, it's funny. I follow both sides on Twitter.
Yeah.
For some reason, I think I get more out of Twitter than what they do on camera. Something about it. A lot of even some of the people that are usually lean Democratic, they're basically feeling like they lost.
Yeah. See,
it's a weird feeling. It's like we didn't quote unquote, we didn't demolish Trump with all his issues. Like, we lost.
Yeah. See, that I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the energy I've been getting. Like, throughout the week, I've been texting people, and even the night of, I'm like, look, you're seeing what you're seeing, and like, this is where I think there's inroads and stuff, but this was always going to be a close election. And I think that these people, because we're in our bubbles, don't understand the Trump appeal to his base. You got to kind of take your emotion out of what you're seeing.
No, his base. Now, I'm being sarcastic. His base is all racist.
But see, like when you do that, because like every time I see like that type of commentary, those guys, they just re-entrench. So part of the reason I think that Trump did as well as he did in this in this election was kind of a pushback and a FU to all the people that have been calling them racist for all this time. And again, I'm not here to say who's racist, who's not racist, but there's other reasons besides race that people vote for Trump, or at least that's what they say, right? And when you just label somebody, no one wants to be put in a box. No one wants to be labeled. So if you got a guy that's like saying these guys are telling you who you are, vote for me, that's a better message than people think. I think, those types of things are.
I find it interesting because Vice President Biden is from Pennsylvania. And he didn't go to his hometown. His hometown is actually considered blue. He didn't go there. He came to the county that I live in, which is red. And him and Senator Harris, he came here 3 times in the last 2 months. She came here, I think, twice. I think the other day, Saturday, she came, and one thing I can say, they really, really were in the battleground states and in those areas, fighting and tugging, and it's funny because when they were still on the campaign trail, and the polls kept saying it's a runaway, I was seeing the other side saying, nah, they know they're in for a dogfight. That's why they're campaigning hard. And I always remember from a kid about the Bradley effect, how a person to tell you one thing, oh, I'm voting such and such, but then go in the booth and do something else. It's like an effect that has shocked the polls, and I really do believe that a lot of the like I said, the Democrat pundits is like, yo, this is a message to us. Like, we need to get it together.
They need to get it together because they're using a system that clearly isn't working, right? Like, this is at this point actually 3 elections in a row where your numbers are lying to you, right? Now they're going to edge it out, and these pollsters are going to say, well, it's the margin of error, and look at the popular vote. But they got a real problem. They don't know how to read this electorate. And to your point, like, you got to get in those battlegrounds because it's not even about winning your county if it's red. It's about peeling off 2%. 2% here, 2% here, run up your numbers in a place that could run up 20,000 extra votes on you. Now it's 10. And over time, that's how you win. Make your number bigger.
It's interesting because like me and your uncle always talk about this stuff because we get politically politics just like overwhelming.
Yeah.
So then when he takes his break, his sabbatical from social media for 40 days, right? It always come back and then like now within 8 months, people gonna be preparing for the midterms, and it's like, oh man, here we go again, and more politics stuff. So, Reggie, man, I really, really appreciate you coming on the show, man, and giving us some of that political education, man. And I really hope that you decide with your family what you want to do politically with your career, man, because I believe that New Jersey. I've talked to 3 young people from New Jersey, younger people, and y'all some smokers, man. One was she was going to the educational sector, but I believe that she's progressive Democrat as well. And man,
I'll surprise you. So, I'm gonna try to keep up. I got so many hobbies, but like I think in a lot of ways it calls me, and I don't think I'm gonna be out of that game my whole life. I think.
Well, you got your Super Bowl going on now, man. Let's just hope. And I'm not a I got I went to school for a little bit of law stuff. I don't really into the Supreme Court. I don't think the Supreme Court is as left leaning and right leaning as people try to make it out to be. I really believe that they try to stick to their interpretation of the law. But I hope this doesn't end up in court, man.
Let's put it this way. There's a lot of legal battles happening right now. My early take on this is the way kind of the Trump camp is fighting this. They're not going after the right side of this to change much, in my opinion. But
yeah, I know Michigan threw out some stuff which was good. Not I'm not gonna say you know, I care who wins. I voted down ballot. You know what you? I'm
Yeah.
quite sure you know what down ballot means.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't, in my right mind, see me checking a box for either
I hear you. You're not wrong.
either one of them people. So really, man, I appreciate you coming on the show, man, and you're more than welcome to come on here, man. We talk about your comedy. You
Yeah.
know, you want to do anything, just let me know, and I got you.
Hey, appreciate that. So
I got
and
you on everybody in the chat. Let's thank Reggie Parker, man, young guy, man. Y'all pay attention to that name. That name's going to be a very big name in the future in New Jersey politics, hopefully. With that, everybody in the chat, take care. Have a blessed night. Stay on, Reg.
appreciate it.